Hey everyone, I'm working to hit 2,000 subscribers and I need your help to get there. If you enjoy the content, please hit that subscribe button right now.
What a week it's been, man. Seriously, I'm sitting here looking at everything going down with the Vikings this offseason, and it's that classic mix of worry and hope that only people who really follow this team day in and day out understand. Because, look, we lost people. We actually lost people. Real contributors who were part of this locker room, part of this identity, and now they're gone. One of our wide receivers has headed to Las Vegas. One of our defensive tackles walked. Our punter is gone. And that's just the beginning. 6 confirmed pieces that won't be with us in 2026. 6 different departures, 6 different stories, and some of them hurt way more than others. I'm going to tell you exactly which ones and why they matter. I'm going to break down the impact each one has on the field, the real holes they're leaving behind, and the genuine questions that need answering. But here's where it gets interesting. At the same time we're dealing with these losses, a name is already popping up on the draft radar that could be the perfect answer to at least one of those holes. A wide receiver from one of the most traditional programs in college football that some serious analysts are already predicting is going to fall right into the Vikings' lap in the 3rd round. And when you look at this guy's profile, when you understand what he brings to the table, it makes perfect sense. It clicks. And that's what we're breaking down today. The losses, the real on-field impact, and this possible solution that could genuinely change everything. But before we get into it, if you're new to the channel, go ahead and subscribe right now. We're pushing hard to hit 5,000 subscribers, and every single subscription counts. Every one of you matters to what we're building here. Drop a like too, because it really helps the channel grow and keeps us bringing you Vikings content every single day. This community matters, and you're part of it. Let's get into it. All right, 6 players, 6 guys who were part of this team, part of this locker room, and now they're gone. And look, not every departure hits the same way. Some of them are just business. You understand them, you move on. But a couple of these ones actually sting. These ones leave real holes. Let me break it down for you, starting from the ones that matter least and building up to the one that hurts the most. Number 6, Ben Sims. Honestly, this one doesn't hurt much. We can acknowledge it, but it's not keeping anyone up at night. The guy played 8 games for us total. He caught 3 passes for 30 yards. When you've got TJ Hawkinson still on the roster and a tight end room that's already pretty full with legitimate options, there just wasn't a spot for him. He's heading to Miami now, and hey, good luck to him. I mean it. The man's got to go find opportunities where he can contribute and get meaningful playing time, but this isn't one that impacts us significantly. This is just roster management. Next, number 5, Ty Chandler. Now, this one is a little more emotional for me because I remember watching Chandler in 2023. He made 4 starts. He rushed for over 400 yards. He scored 3 touchdowns. That was a guy who looked like he was starting to figure it out. That was a guy who was developing into something. You could see the trajectory, but then 2025 happened, and sometimes that's just how it goes. He got hurt in the first game of the season. He didn't come back until week 17, and honestly, at that point, it was time to move on for both sides. When a player misses that much time with injury, when he's trying to get back to full strength, sometimes a fresh start somewhere else is what's best for everyone. He signed with the Saints, and Minnesota is probably going to be looking at the draft to address that running back room. We've got questions about depth and durability there. It is what it is, but it's not a devastating loss. Number 4, Jonathan Allen. Okay, so this one is a little awkward, right? We signed this man to a 3-year deal and then released him after just 1 season. That's not ideal. That's not the kind of move that looks great from a front office perspective. He was fine. He wasn't bad. He wasn't causing problems. But he never reached the level we saw from him when he was in Washington. He never developed into that game-changing defensive lineman we were hoping for when we brought him in. So now he's off to Cincinnati on a 2-year, $26 million deal. At least the cap savings help us going forward. At least we get some relief on that front. But the problem is, we still haven't added defensive tackle depth this offseason. We might be leaning on Levi, Drake Rodriguez, and Tyrion Ingram Dawkins to step up, and I'm not sure I'm ready to bet the house on that just yet. That's a concern moving forward. Number 3, Ryan Wright. 4 years as our punter. 4 solid years of reliability. The man had a strong leg. He was consistent. He was dependable. And honestly, I think the Vikings wanted to keep him. I think they would have preferred to keep him around, but the salary cap situation just didn't allow it. You make these tough choices because you have to, because the money has to go somewhere else, because other priorities take precedence. Wright signed a 4-year, $14 million deal with the Saints, the same team that got Chandler, by the way. And we turned around and signed veteran punter Johnny Hekker on a 1-year deal. Now look, Hekker is no joke. 6-time All-Pro with the Rams, the man has credentials and experience, real pedigree. But he hasn't been that guy in a while. His production has declined. His leg strength isn't what it once was, so we'll see how that plays out. It's a question mark heading into the season. Number 2, Javon Hargrave. Man, this one hurts more than people are giving it credit for. Yeah, he's 33 years old. Yeah, he showed some decline in 2025, but when you look at the actual numbers, the data tells a different story. He still had 3.5 sacks. He accumulated 31 pressures. His pass rushing grade from Pro Football Focus was a solid 70.0. That's not a bad player. That's not a washed-up veteran who can't move anymore. That's a guy who can still disrupt. That's a guy who still makes impact plays. The issue was the run defense. The run defense was real and significant. That was a real problem for Brian Flores' defense all of last year. The team couldn't stop the run consistently. Offenses could establish the ground game against Minnesota. That was a weakness that Hargrave couldn't fully compensate for, but his pass rush ability was still there, still valuable, still something that made the defense function. Now, we've got to find someone who can replace that interior pass rush ability, and that is not easy to do. Interior defensive line production in the NFL is at a premium. Good interior pass rushers don't grow on trees. I had my hopes on Caleb Banks coming in through the draft to fill some of those gaps, but another injury has made that picture a lot cloudier. We're thinner on the defensive line now, and that's concerning heading into 2026. And then number 1, the one that stings the most for me personally, Jalen Nailor. Look, I love a good underdog story. I genuinely do. A 6th-round pick, 4 years of grinding, developing, getting better every single season. And by the time he was truly ready to be a difference maker for this offense, truly ready to show what he could do at the highest level, gone. The Las Vegas Raiders handed him a 3-year, $35 million deal, and we simply couldn't match it. I get it from a business standpoint. I understand the financial reality. The Raiders were willing to invest in him in a way that Minnesota couldn't. That's how it works sometimes. But losing your WR3 when you've got Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison drawing all the attention and all the coverage, that's a real hole in this offense. That's not a minor loss. Nailor wasn't just a depth piece. He wasn't a guy who showed up and played a few snaps a game. He was the release valve. He was the third option that made this whole offense harder to stop. When defenses are shading coverage toward Jefferson and Addison, Nailor was the one who punished them for it. He was reliable. He was productive. He was exactly what you want in a WR3. And now the question is, what do we do? How do we fill that gap? Ty Felton was a 3rd-round pick last year. He was supposed to be the guy stepping into that role. He was the future. But we barely saw him as a rookie, partly because the offense as a whole was struggling with consistency and execution. Do we trust his development? Do we give him more opportunities and more time to grow? Do we go to free agency and grab a veteran receiver who's past his prime but can still contribute and provide stability? Do we look to the draft and find a young guy who can develop into that role? These are real questions that Kevin O'Connell and this front office need to answer before we get to the season. These decisions are going to shape what kind of offense we put on the field. They're going to determine how we attack defenses, how we spread the ball around, how we create opportunities. This offseason has been a wild ride, man. Some of these moves make sense. You look at them and you understand the reasoning. Some of them I'm still processing. But here's the thing that keeps me going as a Vikings fan. Every hole has a potential answer. Every problem has a possible solution. That's what rebuilds and retoolings are all about. You identify the weaknesses, you acknowledge the gaps, and then you work systematically to fill them. And speaking of solutions, There's a name floating around right now that has a lot of people in the Vikings community genuinely excited. A guy that some serious analysts are already predicting lands in Minnesota in the draft. And when you hear what this kid can do, when you understand his profile and his skill set, you're going to understand exactly why people are talking about him as the perfect replacement for what we just lost with Jalen Nailor. That's coming up right after this. Don't go anywhere, because this part really matters. Okay, so if you've been watching this channel for a while, you already know I don't just bring you the bad news and leave you hanging. That's not how we do things here at Report Vikings. And if you're new here, welcome. This is the place where we break down the Vikings in real time, where we give you honest analysis, where we connect the dots between what's happening and what it means. Hit that subscribe button right now, because we're pushing hard toward 5,000 subscribers, and we would absolutely love to have you as part of this community. Drop a like too. It takes 2 seconds, and it means the world to this channel. Now let's talk about the good stuff. We just went through 6 departures. 6 guys who won't be wearing purple in 2026. And the one that hurt the most, the one that left the biggest hole in this offense, was losing Jalen Nailor to the Raiders. A 6th-round pick who spent 4 years with the organization developing, grinding, getting better every single season, and then finally breaking through into that role we needed him to fill. Here's the thing that people need to understand about Nailor's value. It's not always captured in the stat line. It's not always obvious when you're just looking at numbers. Nailor wasn't just a depth piece. He was the guy who kept defenses honest. When you've got Justin Jefferson on one side and Jordan Addison on the other side, defenses are always going to shade coverage toward them. That's just smart football. You put your best coverage on the best receivers. That's basic strategy, but that's where Nailor came in. He was the punishment for doing that. He was the release valve that made the offense function. He was the third option that made this whole machine harder to stop. Kevin O'Connell needs that guy. This offense desperately needs that kind of weapon. So the question is, where does that guy come from? Where do we find that replacement? Free agency is still an option. Sure, there are veterans out there, receivers who are still capable of producing, but most of the wide receivers available in free agency right now are on the wrong side of 30. You're looking at aging receivers trying to extend their careers, and you're not building anything long-term with that kind of move. You're not finding your WR3 of the future in free agency. You're patching a hole temporarily and hoping it works out. The draft, on the other hand, that's where it gets really interesting. That's where you can find real solutions with real longevity. Sports Illustrated analyst Will Regeets just dropped a new 2026 NFL mock draft. And in the 3rd round, he has the Vikings selecting Antonio Williams out of Clemson. And when I first saw that name, I went and did my homework. I watched film. I looked at the numbers. I tried to understand what makes this kid special. And man, this kid can play. Let me give you the numbers, because numbers tell you a lot. In 2024, Williams had 75 receptions. He had 994 receiving yards, and he had 11 touchdowns. 11. That's not a complimentary receiver who shows up on 3rd and 8. That's a guy who produces. That's a guy who scores. That's a guy who makes an impact on the offense. Now, his 2025 season was quieter. 55 catches, 604 yards, 4 touchdowns. There's a dip there, no question. But that kind of dip happens in college football. It happens for all kinds of reasons: injuries, scheme changes, opponent adjustments, development curves. Not every season is a breakout season. The overall development trajectory across 4 years at Clemson under Dabo Swinney is what matters, and that trajectory is genuinely impressive. Here's his physical profile: 5'11", 190 pounds. He's a slot receiver. He runs crisp routes in the middle of the field. He's really effective against zone coverage, which is huge because zone coverage is what most NFL defenses are playing these days. And he has that yards after catch ability that makes him dangerous once the ball is in his hands. He can turn a short slant into a big play. He can create space and make defenders miss. Will Rogers himself described him as having good hands and real juice after the catch. That's a legitimate scouting report. That's not fluff. That tells you the kid has the physical tools and the instincts to succeed at the next level. And here's the detail that jumped out at me the most when I was researching this. Antonio Williams was recently spotted at Clemson's Pro Day chatting with Keenan Martell, our wide receivers coach. That's not random. That's not a coincidence. When your position coach is personally engaging with a prospect at his pro day, when he's having conversations one-on-one, that means the organization is paying attention. That means we're interested. That means there's a real connection being made. Bleacher Report's NFL comparison for Williams is Jalen Noel, the young receiver for the Houston Texans, who showed real promise as a rookie. That's a solid comparison for a third-round pick. You're not asking this guy to be a superstar. You're not expecting first-round production. You're asking him to come in, compete with Ty Felton for that WR3 spot, learn the system, and do what Naylor did. Do what Naylor was so good at doing. Make this offense harder to defend. Be that third option. Be that release valve. Now, look, I'm not going to sit here and pretend this is a done deal. It's a mock draft prediction. Things change all the time in the draft process. Mock drafts are basically educated guesses based on information available at one moment in time. The Vikings could go a completely different direction. They could find a different receiver they like better. They could decide to address a different position earlier. But the fact that this name is being connected to Minnesota, that the fit makes so much sense schematically, that there's already reported interest from our coaching staff, that gives me real hope. That tells me this front office is thinking about solutions. That tells me they're being proactive instead of reactive. That tells me there's a plan. And honestly, this team needs hope right now. After losing 6 players, after seeing holes open up in real places on the roster, we need to see the organization working toward solutions. We need to see coaches at pro days. We need to see the draft board being built with intention. Which brings me to the big picture. And I want to take a moment here because I think it's important to step back and look at what these two stories together are actually telling us about where the Minnesota Vikings are right now, about their present and their future. We lost 6 players this offseason. Some of those losses were manageable. Some of them genuinely hurt. We're thinner on the defensive line. We've got questions in the backfield about depth and durability. We've got a new punter coming in and hoping he can perform. And we've got a real hole at wide receiver where we need to find the next piece of the puzzle. That's the reality. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. That's where we stand. But here's the other side of that coin. Here's what balances the scales. This front office is not sitting still. They're not throwing their hands up and hoping things work out. They're looking at the draft. They're identifying fits. They're having their coaches show up at pro days and building relationships with prospects who make sense for this team. They're being intentional. They're being strategic. That tells me there's a plan. And as a Vikings fan, that's all I ever really ask for. Just show me there's a plan. Show me there's a direction. Show me someone's thinking about the future and building toward it systematically. The 2026 draft could genuinely be the moment where this team patches some of those holes in a real sustainable way, not with overpriced free agents past their prime, not with Band-Aid moves that blow up in your face 2 years later, with young players who can grow inside this system and become exactly what this team needs. Players like Antonio Williams, players who fit the offense, players who can develop into something special. Is this offseason perfect? No, not even close. Are there reasons to be nervous? Absolutely. We lost productive players. We've got holes to fill. We've got questions that need answering. That's all true. But is there also real reason to be excited about what's coming? Yes, there absolutely is. For me, as someone who has watched this team through a lot of tough moments, through lean years and drafts that didn't work out and moves that backfired, I'll take cautious optimism every single time. I'll take a front office that's thinking ahead. I'll take coaches who are out there building relationships with prospects. The draft is right around the corner. The decisions being made right now, the moves being executed in this moment, are going to define what kind of team we put on the field in 2026. Are we going to be competitive? Are we going to have the pieces in place? Are we going to be able to execute the vision? That's what this offseason is going to determine. And I'm going to be right here, covering every single move, every single pick, every single development as it happens. This is your space to stay locked in on everything Vikings. This is where you come for honest analysis and real perspective. So if you're not subscribed yet, come on, man, hit that button. We are so close to 5,000 subscribers, and this community is only going to keep growing. We're building something real here. Leave a like on this video. It takes 2 seconds and it matters. Leave a comment below telling me what you think about Antonio Williams as a Naylor replacement. Do you love it? Do you hate it? Would you rather go a different direction? Are you excited about this prospect? Are you skeptical? I want to hear from you. That's what makes this community special. That's what keeps the conversation going. That's it for today. Thanks for watching. Skull Vikings. I'll see you in the next one.
Hey everyone, I'm working to hit 2,000 subscribers and I need your help to get there. If you enjoy the content, please hit that subscribe button right now.